Good morning to everyone. It is an honor and privilege to be in front of you today. My name is Kesong Kosana. I'm from the Vetisuk. The name of the school is the Sentinel Primary School from Tidal Chaba. The district is called Tabomfutsanyana. Today we're going to talk about different types of energy sources. The first energy source that we're going to talk about is non-renewable energy source. But before we talk about renewable and non-renewable energy sources, we must first understand what is a source. A source is where we derive an energy. It's where we derive energy in a form of a raw form. Example, we derive coal from the stone that have been mined from various mining industries. We derive oil from the mining that is taking place from different countries. Everything that we are deriving energy source within, we call it a source of energy. Today's topic, as I already indicated, is the sources of energy. Sources of energy differs because we've got the two types of sources of energy. It's renewable and non-renewable. Non-renewable energy sources are those energy sources that eventually will run out, and they are not recyclable, and they are also not environmental friendly. When we are talking about those sources, we are talking about sources like coal, uranium, of which is a part of a non-renewable energy sources. Apart from coal and uranium, we are also having different types of non-renewable energy sources such as oil, nuclear energy, natural gases. And if you are aware, these energy sources we are using each and every day of our life. And apart from using them, they've got a very severe negative consequences towards the environment. In simple terms, they are not environmental friendly. Non-renewable energy sources, they are derived from what we call fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are that matter that died millions or billions of years ago. After they died, the cycle of non-renewable energy sources started there, whereby we are mining them. Afterwards, we're going to consume them for our home use. Example of oil. Oil, we use it in terms of making cars to work, ships and other stuff. Nuclear energy, we also use it for electricity purposes. We're also using it for making bombs and other issues. And natural gases, we are also using it to provide us with heat energy. We know at home we are using things like gases and others. Apart from that, also natural gases can provide us with a source of electricity. And again, another one that I want to discuss is the one that is called the coal. Coal also, we use the coal for heating ourselves, for warming ourselves. We use the coal to generate electricity with it. We also use the coal as a means of transportation. We know some of the old trains, they were using coals to transport whatever merchandise or any product they were transporting. And another thing that you must know about non-renewable energy sources, they've got too much disadvantages. Some of the disadvantages that they are having, they cause things like they release things like greenhouse gases, and as a result, they result in what we call a global warming. Already we are feeling the effects of the global warming because already we are having gradual increase of the temperatures, melting of the ice, and a drastic increase in the temperatures and other related issues that are affecting us because of the global warming that is resulted from the release of too much carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. And as a result, they tear our ozone layer and make this a problem that we call climate change. And non-renewable energy sources, again, they do have a severe disadvantages or negative impact to the environment, like the process of extracting them in a process of mining. It is already having a negative impact because it is causing environmental impacts such as soil pollution, air pollution, water pollution, and in some places it's causing sound pollution. Another thing that you must know about non-renewable energy sources is that eventually they will run out because they are not recyclable. We use them once. That is the other negative impacts of them. Then this means If we use them once and we are not able to replace them, someday we are not going to have them. As a result, they become more expensive. When the non-renewable energy sources become more expensive, our livelihood get to be impacted. Example, if oil prices increases, the food prices increases because the food production and food transportation, it relies on the non-renewable energy sources. But various scientists are trying to come out with the various ways to ensure that these non-renewable energy sources are going to be replaced someday so that we can protect our climate that is eventually being destroyed by these non-renewable energy sources. Here in South Africa, we've got the one nuclear power station, of which we call it Koeberg. We get it from the Western Cape. It is another source of non-renewable energy sources. The negative effect of uranium is that it is having radiation, or it is radioactive, of which it can have impact that will last for a very long time. And as a result, is going to have a negative impact to the environment, to the people, to our health, and to the environment in general. So for now, non-renewable energy sources are having a very negative impact towards our environment. Again, when we are talking about the coal, from the coal we can derive petroleum, we can derive natural gases. And remember, I said coal is derived from fossil fuel that millions of years ago. And eventually, South Africa is the biggest producer of the coal here in South Africa. But ironically, so we are still having the problem in terms of the electricity and others, because to mine coal is extremely expensive. That is another disadvantage of having a coal. Another thing that we derive from oil is petroleum products such as paraffin, petrol, diesel, benzene, and others. These all are petroleum products. They form part of what we call oil reproduction. Apart from those that I have already stated, we've got the butamines, we've got the tar sands, we've got the heavy oils. Example, we know what is happening with our oceans if you can have an oil leak. Aquatic animals dies, water get to be contaminated, and it is having a very severe result, even to the economy and other factors. Again, this oil industry, it is also contributing towards a very big release of the greenhouse gases that destroy our ozone layer and eventually result in various devastating environmental hazards. We saw example of a tsunami previously. We saw example of Katrina. There are so many impacts that are showing that we have learned about them. And in this negative impact, people lose their lives, environment get to be destroyed, building get to be destroyed. So even our seasons are now disturbed because of this non-renewable energy sources. And again, when I'm discussing nuclear, uranium, nuclear, as I indicated, it is having this chain of radioactiveness. The radioactiveness can approximately last for 50 years because, remember, nuclear, in order to biodegrade, it must at least spend half of a century or a century. So it is very, very bad, and it is a very radioactive metal that you must try by all means to avoid. And the nuclear power plant, they are very expensive to maintain, of which is another economic implication that we are having because of non-renewable energy resources. Then again, fossil fuels, eventually, they are not sustainable. We cannot have them for a long time. That's why it's a positive impact of why we must get rid of non-renewable energy sources to save our life, our future. Now, another thing to explain is the natural gases. I would like to elaborate further in the natural gases. Natural gases are also known as fossil gases. Sometimes they are just being called a gas. Yes, at home, most of the families, they are still relying on gas, especially when we're going to encounter this season that is called winter. Most of the families are going to experience the burning down of the houses. are going to experience the explosiveness of the natural gases and other things. They are having so many negative effects. Natural gas, it is consists of the following. It is consist of the hydrocarbon gases. Some of them, they consist of the carbon dioxide, nitrogen, hydrogen, sulfide, helium, and other compounds that are consisting of these. As a result, they've got a high amount of alkanes in some of them, commonly so. So those elements that are indicated, they are having a very negative impact towards our environment because they tear our ozone layer. Remember, ozone layer is like our protective blanket that protect us from the radiation from the sun. The more the tearing of the ozone layer takes place, the more we're going to have a dramatic increase of the temperatures. Then we're going to call that climate change. How to avoid climate change? We must try to move from non-renewable to renewable energy sources. Hence, we've got this new term that we call ecosystem, whereby we've got the eco-friendly product that are still able to provide us with energy, but they are not having this severe negative impact that non-renewable energy sources are heavy. Now, another thing that need to be understood about disadvantages of non-renewable energy sources. Here are the common disadvantages of non-renewable sources. Fossil fuels create air pollution, a lot of air pollution. Fossil fuels also create a huge amount of smoke when they are burnt. This huge amount of smoke that they produce when they are burnt is going to lead to this thing that we call acidic rains. Another thing, fossil fuels, most of the time, they are causing a huge destruction of the environment due to the process of mining. We know the mining is the process whereby minerals are going to be extracted. Then another thing, fossil fuels are finite source of energy, like petroleums, oil, and others, of which they are still going back to what we call air pollution. They produce too much of air pollution. Air pollution is going to contribute negatively to what we call acidic rains. Acidic rains is going to contribute negatively towards what we call imbalancing of the seasons. And another thing, fossil fuels are not environmental friendly. Therefore, we are trying to move away from them to protect our ecosystem by the all means. Now I am going to discuss the chapter that we call renewable energy sources. Renewable energy sources, most of them, they are coming from nature. They are free and they are environmental friendly. Renewable energy sources ranges from what we call wave and tidal power, hydropower, solar power, wind power, and so any other types of eco-energy. Eco-energy also, it is also good to use them because we can recycle them, we can reproduce them because we are always saving the sun 365 days of a year. Then we are always having a wind, we are always having biofuels from organic matters. Therefore, renewable energy sources is the path that the world is trying to take in order to protect the environment, in order to reduce this climate change, in order to reduce this emission, this too much emission of the greenhouse gases. Non-renewable energy sources, as indicated, they are expensive, while renewable energy sources, they are not expensive. Most of them, they are free from the nature. A renewable energy source, also known as a flow energy source, it is natural resource which will replenish and to replace the portion of the depleted usage of the consumption. This means if it can happen, maybe through your photovoltaic cell that is absorbing the radiant energy from the solar, it is depleted. The next day you can easily recharge it regardless of the season, but you're going to be able to recharge it, reuse it, and to save energy more. Another thing, they are free from nature. This means they can reoccur at various type of scale. Therefore, we don't need to worry that much about if they are going to run out someday or something. They will forever be with us. They are cheap and we can even maintain them easily. Another advantages of using non-renewable energy sources is that most of them, they are not producing too much of the carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, the one that destroys our environment. It is also a source of energy that is reliable and it is trustworthy. And it can also increase the reproduction of various countries, because most of renewable energy sources, they are free and it will depend upon the climate of the country. Let's make a typical example about non-renewable energy sources that we are talking about. Renewable energy sources that we are talking about. Renewable energy sources that we are talking about, it is solar energy, wind energy, hydro energy, wave and tidal energy, geothermal energy, and bioenergy. Note that geothermal energy will also be helpful in terms of the countries that are maybe experiencing the volcanic eruptions. This is where they can derive this geothermal energy. Then biofuels, even in the olden age, most of the people, they were relying on the biofuels because biofuels, they get them from nature. Typicals of the biofuels, it can be sugar canes, it can be maize, it can be ethanol that we can derive from the sugar cane and others. It can be wood. Our great-grandmothers and grandmothers, they were using wood in order to provide a source of heat energy. And again, solar energy. Solar energy is always available and is always cheap. That's why there are so many alternatives or initiatives of trying to implant or install a solar power plant in order to substitute the coal plant that we are so reliant on. And again, wind energy. We are always saving a wind each and every day. If we can loyally invest more in the wind energy, a country can save, a country can be able to save in terms of the energy sustainability. Because wind energy, it is easy to produce and it is easy to store it for later use, just like solar energy. And it's also easy to replace or to recycle if it happens that it is starting to get depleted. And also, it can be used at any given season, regardless of the climate. And again, hydropower. Hydropower is a source of energy that we derive from the falling water. And how many falling water that we are having in the country? We've got so many of them. We've got so many dams. We've got so many rivers that we can derive this hydropower. Hydropower also is going to be helpful, and it is a very good source of energy because it can help us to avoid this too much contamination of the climate change that is taking place. And it's also easily accessible, and it can create a lot of work opportunity for many people. And again, it does not release these harmful gases such as carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide that destroys our ozone layer. This means we're going to be in the process of reviving our climate. As a result, natural resources are going to be saved and are going to be sustained for upcoming generations. Wave and tidal power. Unfortunately, in South Africa, we are not having too much resources to produce this one of the wave and tidal power. But nevertheless, our country is buying this wave and tidal power from the other countries such as Mozambique and others, whereby they're having a lot of tides. But different alternatives are still being developed in order to ensure that we upgrade and use this wave and tidal power in order to benefit our country and in order to save our environment for future use and sustainability. I'm still continuing with these renewable energy sources, and I'm going to discuss the solar energy into deeper details. At the beginning, I indicated different types of renewable energy sources, and I also indicated a solar energy. What is a solar energy? Solar energy is the energy from the sun. How do we derive this energy from the sun? We can use what we call solar panels. Solar panels are consist with what we call photovoltaic cell. This photovoltaic cell can save a solar energy for approximately 7 days, even if the sun is not out. How does it work? The photovoltaic cell is going to convert the energy of the light into the electrical energy. We call this a photovoltaic effect, which is a physical and a chemical phenomena that help us to understand how does the solar energy works. Advantage of the solar energy. Solar energy is suitable for area that receives a lot of sunlight. Imagine South Africa. We've got too much sunlight, of which is going to work as our advantage. Another thing, this photovoltaic cell or the battery, it can be used within our household in order to use it maybe to make our geyser warm, for radios and other sources of energy. This battery system it can store energy for 7 days as I indicated, even when there is no sunshine. The system is almost maintenance free. This means you won't spend a lot of money maintaining it, because solar panels, they just need to be cleaned, and if they are covered with dust, even if there is no sun or there is no sunlight, it can be checked regularly, cleaned and being used. Then again, it is using a very simple chemical reaction and a physical science principle in order to convert a sun energy to the electrical energy, as I already indicated. Hydropower. Now I'm discussing hydropower into deeper details. Hydropower simply means energy that is coming from water. You can also call it the water power. This water power, we take it or we produce it from what we call a falling water, or a water that are running fast. It can produce this type of electrical energy. It is achieved by converting a kinetic energy of water into electrical and mechanical energy. Remember, kinetic energy is the energy that we derive from a motion or any acceleration of the object. In this case, we are talking about the water, falling water, or water that is running fast from anything, a dam, river, lake, or whatsoever. It can be derived from that. And hydropower is also a form of what we call a green energy production. A green energy production is the types of energy that help us to preserve our environment, because it's eco-friendly. It does not have a negative impact that will cause our environment to deplete and result in various environmental hazards. In order to avoid this, in order to keep our environment good, we must use what we call hydropower. Then wave and tidal power, as I indicated earlier. Wave and tidal power, it is derived from the tides and waves. Remember, South Africa it is serving various types of oceans, of which we can derive this wave and tidal power. Also, there are countries that are having a very too much of the tides and waves. That's why we are also buying this power from other countries. South Africa, although is saving less in tidal power, different initiatives are still being developed in order to see if, for future sake, we cannot have a sustainable mechanism in order to produce this wave and tidal power. Wave and tidal power is mostly produced in kilowatt and in watts. And South Africa, as indicated, is currently buying it from the country that is called Mozambique, because it is saving enough tides and waves to produce this type of power. Then other aspect that I am going to discuss into deeper details is biofuels. Biofuels, we derive them from organic matter. Organic matter, we are talking about the plants, as indicated. The plants can be a maize meal, not a maize meal, a maize. A plant can be a sugar cane. A plant can be even the cow duck. We can also use it to produce these biofuels. Biofuels are organic, and they are also consist of elements that are environmental friendly. In simple terms, we call them eco-friendly. Also, let's make a typical example. From the sugarcane, we can produce what we call ethanol. We can also use that ethanol to produce car fuels and other fuels that we can use in order to increase the reproduction in the country and manufacturing. Then also, as I indicated that renewable energy sources are mostly reliable and they are cheap. They've got a cheap method of reproduction. Then, as a reminder, I said to you, we are having the following and more renewable energy sources. I said we are having hydropower, solar energy, wind energy, wave and tidal power, geothermal energy from the countries that are experiencing eruption of volcano, and we're also having biomass, also known as biofuels. Let's talk more about the advantages of renewable energy sources. As indicated, let me start first with the wind energy. Wind energy, advantage of it does not have air pollution or water pollution. It is free source of energy. Wind farms, most of the time, they produce more because relatively it is inexpensive to produce this type of energy. Again, it can be used for various purposes apart from energy reproduction. Although it is having few disadvantages, the disadvantage of it is that it requires a constant amount of air. It also requires a significant amount of space, and it is sometimes having a visual impact on the landscape. But nevertheless, there are less disadvantages and more advantages. Hence, wind energy is good for future sustainability of production of energy. Solar energy. Solar energy is always there and it can be produced in a high amount. It does not require air or water in order to be reproduced. It just requires the sunlight. When I say it does not require air and water, this means it does not have any type of pollution in relation to those. And again, the storage of it needs to be maintained now and then. That is the disadvantage of it. Workability depends on the availability of the sunlight in order to reproduce it. That is the other disadvantage. This means if we can have a prolonged prolonged time or a period without the sun, we might have a rapid depletion of this type of energy source. Then let's talk about advantage of the hydropower. It's a source of energy that we are having it in abundance, and it is safe to produce and it is clear. It does not have any standby losses, and also it is relatively inexpensive. This means it is very, very cheap to reproduce. It's an advantage of it. Then the disadvantage of it, sometimes it can cause floods, but it is a very good source of energy. Let's talk about biofuels. Advantage of the biofuels. Biofuels are cheap to construct and doesn't have any emission or greenhouse gases reproduction that will harm the environment. And the last one is the one that South Africa does not have. It is called a geothermal energy. As indicated, geothermal energy is the energy that we derive from the potential infinite source of energy supply, such as a volcano and others. It is very, very cheap to reproduce. It is sustainable, it's reliable. But sometimes the setup of it might be expensive, so it might have the cost implication as a result. Sources of energy are very good, especially for reproduction and for future maintenance of our country. Let's try to, by all means, to move to what we call renewable energy sources. That will be good. Then for natural science learners, be able to differentiate between these different sources of energy and be able to be familiar with the terminology that we use when you're talking about these sources of energy. Also, be able to differentiate between renewable and non-renewable and its negative effect and this is a positive impact. And another thing that you must know what are the other alternative methods. Now we are talking about the scientific innovations that can be used in order to help the country to move more into to move away from non-renewable energy sources and to move to these renewable energy sources. Thank you with your time. May God bless you.